Thank you for coming in early. We're just going to let people settle in here. Real quickly, if you guys, people that are already in here, if you can just confirm for me, you can see me and hear me and see the screen. Type a number 1 into the chat. That'd be super awesome. Cool. Thank you, Terry. Cool. Thank you, everyone. We're going to allow people to jump into this webinar and give it another 2-3 minutes, if you guys don't mind. Awesome. And you know what? In the meantime, we're gonna wait around 2-3 minutes. But I'd love for you guys to tell me in the chat, what kind of business do you have? You don't have to get into the details, but tell me, I have a barbershop, I have an e-commerce store, I have a, I don't know, what's something crazy? Warehouse, I own a warehouse. Awesome. Cat grooming, very cool. Accounting and tax, business financial consultant, very cool. E-commerce art store, I love it. And as people, put up their businesses on this chat, take a note of it, make some connections. You never know where you're going to meet your next business partner. And, I've met people on LinkedIn, on Instagram, I've gotten customers from Instagram, who would have thought? All right, so we're at 12:01, and thank you for everyone that put up their businesses in the chat. Really cool. So we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to another NJ Thrives Thursday. If you've been here before, you know that these are weekly webinar series from the NJSBDC for small business owners of New Jersey. I'm your host, Christian Pichardo, NJSBDC marketing consultant and CEO at NilumoMedia.com. So the NJSBDC, or New Jersey Small Business Development Centers Network, it's a statewide program powered by the SBA and partners to help small businesses in New Jersey with no cost small business consulting, training, and events starting at $0, and exclusive small business resources only available to our clients. So for today's agenda, we're going to go over a couple of headlines. We're going to go into the webinar, and then at the end, I'd love for you guys to submit questions for the Q&A. So we have 3 headlines for today. This one is from last week, but this is just a reminder that the SBA's PPP program portal was opened, and yesterday, so August 4th, is when the platform began to accept applications. So the link to that, I believe, is this one. So go ahead. We're going to drop the link to this article actually into the chat so you guys can read read through it. But that's one headline. Our next headline is the NJEDA. We have any developers here? It announced a $75 million program for commercial projects. So this is also very interesting program. Please take a look at it, mostly for developers. And the last one is regarding workshops and training for small businesses that want to get contracts with the state of New Jersey. So it's called the Small Business Bonding Readiness Assistance Program. And basically it's just classes, workshops, and counseling sessions to help you get contracts with the state. As far as what it says here, it says state and federal contracts. So yeah, you just never know, right? Even if you have a cat grooming business, you might be able, who knows? You know, who knows? You might take care of the city hall pets or something, you know? So I know that state and federal government provide contracts to a lot of stuff, and you never know if your business is eligible or can bid on contracts. So highly recommend to go through this. But that is our headlines for today. 3 things to keep in mind. Please drop your questions into the Q&A box. Sometimes if you put them in the chat, we won't be able to get to them because we mostly focus on the Q&A. So under your Zoom screen, the window here, on the bottom, there's going to be a toolbar. There's going to be a lot of little options there. There's going to be something that says Q&A. So that's where you would go in and submit questions. You can ask them anonymously as well. Number 2, complete the 3-minute survey that's going to appear after this webinar ends. It's important for you to give us your feedback. And once you complete the survey, you'll get access to the webinar materials. So the presentation that our speaker is going to be using, and you're going to get a link to the on-demand version of this that usually comes out within 48 hours. And number 3, just by attending this event, you're eligible for the Upgrade Your Business certificate. It is our own certificate that we provide. So you can learn more about that at the link below. Again, we're going to drop that into the chat. But now to the good stuff. Today we have Tim Peter, founder and president, Tim Peter and Associates, for creating an exceptional customer experience. How you doing, Tim?
I am doing great, Christian. Thank you so much for having me today. And for those of you watching, with me as well is Margaret O'Donnell, who is from Rutgers Business School Exec Ed, the brilliant and talented Margaret O'Donnell, who will be fielding your questions and getting to me as we go forward.
Awesome. I'm excited for the presentation. I'm out of here for the meantime.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So just give me 1 second. And now you should see my screen. Yes. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I really do appreciate it. I've been keeping track of the businesses that you say you all are involved with and things like that. I will try to make sure I touch upon anything that's specific to those as we go forward. The other thing I'd like to talk about is if anyone would like to submit their website, you can feel free to put that in the Q&A, and I may pick one given how we do on time to kind of look at what is the customer experience. So if you'd like it to be reviewed publicly in front of the entire audience in terms of how your digital customer experience works and things like that, I'd be more than happy to have a volunteer. Don't feel obligated, but I want to know it's an option. And depending on time, we may or may not be able to get to it, but by all means, please do feel free to do so. So let me ask you a question. Would it shock you if I told you that Google made $60 billion last quarter? Would that shock you? $60 billion in a quarter, right? So they are on pace right now for almost $250 billion in revenue this year, which is just insane. In fact, it's such a big number, it can be hard to get your head around. So I thought, instead of saying $60 billion last quarter, let's make that a much more reasonable number. Let's make that $666 million every day. That's much easier to get our heads around, right? Wait, maybe not. Okay, so what if we made it $28 million every hour? Surely we can get our heads around, oh, wait, no, that's still a really big number. Okay, let's bring it down to a really small number. How about $460,000 every minute? So in the time it has taken me to present this slide, Google has brought in as much revenue as many of your businesses might in a year, right? Which is nuts. That's a nuts number, right? And the question that I think we need to ask ourselves is, how did they do it? How did they do it? Because the other question we want to ask is, how do we do that? Right? How do we do that? And a lot of that is going to come down to customer experience, but there's a very specific way they did it. There's a very specific way they did it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Google is able to provide the customer experience because they know what customers want. They know exactly what it is people want. And how do they know what it is people want? Well, you see that little box right there in the middle of the screen? Customers come in and actually tell them what they want. Right? Google's in the best business in the world because they don't have to guess what customers want. They don't have to go out and do focus groups. They don't have to go out and do studies. They don't have to go out and do research. Customers literally show up every day and say, I have a problem. I have a need. I want to buy something. And Google goes, great, fantastic. We're either going to point you to the people who do that and make those people maybe pay us $1 every time we do, or we're going to get into that business. If you think about Google Hotel Finder, if you think about Google Job Finder, if you think about, right, Google Shopping, various products and services that they offer that they then monetize, they didn't think, maybe today we should get into doing some stuff with retail. They said, wow, there's all these people asking about retail. Where do I buy this thing? We should make it easier for people to do that. And we'll take a tiny little piece of every single person who comes through here. And that's how we make, $666 million every day. That's how we make $460,000 every minute. Google customers tell Google everything. Now, here's how often customers tell them that. They tell them that 3 million times plus every minute, right? So if we think about the amount of data that Google has access to, they're getting 3 million plus people every minute saying, here's a problem I have. And by the way, those 3 million people roughly turn into $460,000 in revenue for them, right? So it's pretty good. The question we want to ask is, if customers tell Google everything, how do you get them to tell you what they want? And that is a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Not because we don't want to focus on customer experience, but precisely because we want to focus on customer experience. You can only have a great experience if you know what it is your customers want, and then deliver that for them, right? So that's what we're going to be focusing on as we go through this today. Now, a couple of ground rules. I recognize that, many of you have put in the kind of company that you have. I saw an e-commerce art store, I saw an accountant, I saw cat grooming, business consultant, a value-added reseller of computer products and services, mobile window and door installation, fine arts. So you do lots of different things. And there's an easy way to think about this. When we think about the customer experience, we need to think about it across every touch point that a customer has with us. Are we giving them the experience that they need? Are we helping them? Are we answering their questions at all of the various touch points? And if we're not answering it in a specific touch point, are we directing them to a place that does? Right. So the first rule is you have to be the places your customers want you to be. And if you can't answer the question in that place, you need to direct them to the place that you can answer that question. right? Very simple rule. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide and the next slide, but I want to just make sure we're all saying the same thing. So the way you do this is through your web presence, not just your website, but your web presence, where you are across the digital ecosystem. And if you're in B2C, and I've got two slides on this, one for B2C, meaning you sell to consumers, and I've got one for B2B, meaning you sell to businesses, because they're a little different, okay? But we're going to start with B2C real quick. First and foremost, you must have a website, right? If you don't have a website, you don't exist, period. Period. You do not have a website, you do not exist, period. I feel very strongly about that. You also need an email list. You need a way to connect with your customers. You need a way to reach out to them directly that doesn't require you to pay someone else. You don't want to do it through Facebook. You don't want to do it through advertising. You don't want to do it through, other channels like that, because at any time, those people can change the rules for who you could talk to and how much it costs you. So you always want a way you can go direct to customers, and your email list is that way. Now, if you're in B2C, you probably want Facebook or Instagram, and possibly both. For some kinds of businesses, and it does vary a little bit, Facebook is a little better. If I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the folks who are on this list, if you are a B2C accountant, your Facebook page is probably more important than an Instagram page. If you're doing art and things like that, Instagram is probably better because it's such a visual medium, probably, right? You probably want both in that specific case, but you want to think about, having at least one of them and err towards the one. And then if you have a physical location, you want a Google My Business page, which very simple. There are links at the end of this slide deck, which you will get when you complete the survey later, that show you where to go to sign up for these, but just be aware that's what you want to do. If you're in a B2B business, you'll note it hasn't changed much. You have to have a website, check. You have to have an email list, check. If you have a physical location, you have to have a Google My Business page, right? But in B2B, instead of having Facebook or Instagram as being the most important social channel for you, you probably want LinkedIn to be that channel for you and have a page there, okay? So that's your web presence. That's what you need to have available so you can connect with your customers. If you don't have a website, I'm going to spend very little time on this, but these are two sites that I recommend. One is WordPress.com. It's a great all-around website builder. It's a better solution if you don't require an online shopping cart. So if you're not selling things directly to your customers on your website, WordPress is a pretty good option for you. It's relatively low cost, it's relatively simple to set up, and it will scale as you grow. If you do sell to customers directly from your website, Shopify.com is a really good option for you. A great option if you require an online store. It is also relatively low cost. It's relatively simple to set up. And again, it can scale as you grow. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I expect most people, already have a website. But if you don't, do I sell directly to customers on the web? Look at Shopify. Do I not sell directly to them on the web? But they come into my office, they come into my store, I meet with them someplace. Use WordPress.com. Okay. All right. Now you're probably asking, or you might be asking right now, well, why can't I just use one of these other folks? I'll just sell through Amazon, or I'll let Uber Eats or DoorDash deliver this, or I got a Facebook page, or I'm in the App Store, or something along those lines. Why can't I just use one of these? Well, there's a really simple reason for that, and it is this: they're the gatekeepers, right? They're the ones who get between you and the customer. And anytime you put somebody between you and your customer, you give them the ability to charge a toll. And they can increase the tolls anytime they want. Now, we're all New Jerseyans. We love the Turnpike. We love the Parkway. It's great. But there's no easy pass here. They raise the rates whenever we want. You're going to feel it at the end of every month. You probably know this as a small business owner. It's not what you make, it's what you keep, right? It's all about making sure that you're thinking about how do I lower the cost that I have to reach my customers and provide them the experiences that I want to provide them. Otherwise, you might increase your revenues, but if your costs go up at the same rate, you're not making any more money. So we don't hate these guys. Despite the fact that Google makes $666 million a day, we're not going to say 666 is evil in this case. Good for them. They're doing what is right for customers. They're doing what's right for their shareholders. They're not evil, but they make money by charging you to get between you and the customer. That's what they do. So we don't dislike these guys. We just have to recognize what they are. They're gatekeepers. They're toll booths, right? By the way, I didn't say this at the beginning because it wasn't necessary yet, but just so you know, I'm a small business owner too. I've got a consulting firm. I'm based in New Jersey and I am a small business owner. This is the world I live in. I face the same challenges you do. So, I get it. I like Google. I like Facebook. I like LinkedIn. I like all those guys. They're great, right? I don't want to pay them any more money than I absolutely have to, because every dollar I pay them is a dollar that doesn't go to my family, right? So that's how we want to think about that. Now, we know that they're going to do this. We know that we're going to do this. This is a guy named Bill Reddy. He's the president of Commerce, Payments, and Next Billion Users at Google, right? It's this guy's job. And he has said, two businesses said on stage, for real, think of Google as the connector between you and your evolving customer base. What he didn't say there is there's probably a ... that was so that we can charge you a toll to do that, right? I mean, again, they're not evil, they're not terrible people, but they're also not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this because there's a commercial entity. That's how they get to $60 billion in a quarter, right? They want to be the connector between you and every single customer. Amazon has been even more explicit about it. Jeff Bezos, the recently retired CEO of Amazon and now current space cowboy, has said, your margin is my opportunity. Your profits, the margin you make on every sale, is an opportunity for him to get between you and the customer. Right? Now, I said Google may not be evil. I'm not so sure about Amazon on this one. I kid. But that's what we want to think about. They are trying to charge a toll and the like. So that's why you need your own web presence. The other problem you have here is it's also where your competition lives. If somebody comes to your website, somebody goes to Google, they do a search. Let's say I'm looking for landscaping in Bergen County, and I click on a link for one of these landscapers right here. And I haven't looked at these closely, so I'm not trying to pick on anybody. If somebody from one of these companies is on the phone, I do apologize. I'm not trying to pick on you. But I click on Everything Backyards, and I go to their website, and I don't like what I see, and I go back to Google, right? Well, the problem is, we aren't there. All my competitors are right there. Odds are they're going to choose somebody else. Once I get them to the website, I want to keep them on the website. Once I get them to the website, I want to convert them for some given definition of conversions, which could be buy something, right? Buy something from my e-commerce art store. It could be schedule an appointment if I'm an accountant or a Casper owner. It could be walk into my store if I am reselling of computer products, right? Those are all conversions of different times. It could be sign up for my email list if I'm, a fine artist, right? So those are all conversions, but I want to keep them here because otherwise, if they go to Google or they go to Facebook, and I'm looking at the suggested offers here on Facebook, now they're seeing my competitors as well. And I'm not saying they will choose the competitors. I'm saying the odds of them choosing your competitor when they're on another site are much higher than the odds that they're going to choose a competitor when they're on your own website. Right? By the way, pro tip, if you have ads and things like that for your competitors on your website, you may not want to do that. Maybe you want to rethink what you're doing there, right? Are there any questions about any of that before I move forward?
Our audience has been pretty quiet with questions. Although I just saw something pop in. Let me see. All right, we do have something here. Do you feel that e-commerce is going to grow over time as compared to many physical stores which have been closing down?
So absolutely. Actually, e-commerce grows at a much faster rate than than physical retail has, and that's been true for about the last decade and a half, honestly. Growth rates for e-commerce broadly are in the, it depends whose numbers you use, but they are in the low double digits, 12%, 13% a year, well, let me just say 12 to 13% a year. It depends on category. Some categories are growing faster than others in e-commerce. So for instance, online auto sales are growing much faster than, something like online book sales, which is a very mature category for e-commerce. But on average, it's growing about 10 to 12% per year. Whereas physical retail is growing roughly about 5% per year, 3 to 5% a year, which you would imagine is true. Physical retail has been a thing for a much, much longer period. It is a much, much larger category. So its growth rate is slower. We did see last year, we saw that e-commerce sales, as you might imagine in the middle of the pandemic, exploded. Shopify, which is a system that you can use, I mentioned a moment ago, that you can use to create an e-commerce store for your business. Shopify's gross merchandise volume, gross merchandise revenue sold through the platform. I'm pulling these numbers from memory, so I may be off a little bit. If I recall correctly, 3 years ago, they grew at something like, 3 years ago being 2018, they grew at something like 30%. And then that might be wrong, I think they grew like 40%. And then in 2019, they grew at something like 30%. It was going down year on year. The growth rate, the revenues were going up, the amount of stuff they sold was going up, but the growth rate was slowing. In 2020, I know this number off the top of my head, the gross merchandise value sold through Spotify grew 115%. So it went from here to here to here. So yeah, we have lived through in the last year a generational shift to digital. We have lived through a generational shift to e-commerce. It's been happening for years, and then it just took a hard turn up last year, as you might imagine. Now I expect this year will be much, much, much softer growth rate, but it's still going to grow faster than physical retail, for sure. And although I think the growth rate is going to slow down over time, I don't think this is pretty well understood that it's going to slow down over time. It's still going to outpace physical retail for a while, so yeah. Okay.
All right. One other question, if you don't mind.
No, please.
This one is, what do you think of Google Workspace and registering a domain with them?
So I'm going to take those in reverse order. I don't have a problem with registering a domain through Google. It is completely fine. I do tend to like registering my domains through third parties who aren't Google, just because I like to keep the different pieces separate, so that if the rules change in one place, I'm not dependent on one person for something. So I like Namesheet.com or GoDaddy.com for domain registration personally, but I use a separate web host and things like that because I like to keep the pieces different places. I had an experience, this is going back a long time ago, but 2006, 2007, my web hosting company vanished in the middle of the night. They went out of business. And if I had also registered my domain there, I would have been in deep, deep, deep trouble, because not only did I not have a website, but I would have had no way to point the website someplace else. And because I kept them separate, when the web hosting company went out of business, I was able to get another web host, go to my DNS registrar, point it to the new web host, and I was back up and running within a day or so. If everything was in the one place, not that I think Google's going to go out of business, but if everything's in the one place and they were to change the rules and go away and things like that, that could be a problem, right? So I tend to like keeping them separate. In terms of Google Web Space as a tool for your calendaring and email and things along those lines, I mean, I will tell you with full candor, I am a customer. It's what I use. So sure, it's really good. There seem to be two schools of thought. You're either people who grew up with Office and Outlook for your email, or you use Google and Gmail for your email. I mean, those tend to be the two bigger players in town. People who are specialists in this area might have a different point of view, but in my experience, that's what you seem to run into. So if you like Google and you like Gmail, Google Workspace is pretty good. Speaking as a customer, I like it just fine. If you're more of an Outlook person and that's what your background is, you may want to choose Microsoft. Right? Okay.
Great. And I just want to, before we move on, ask anyone who's using chat to put websites to consider and any questions, if you could try to move those over to the Q&A box for us. Don't need to get into a lot of detail, but we lose things in the chat and can keep much better track of them in Q&A. So I'll just ask our audience to use the Q&A for those two things.
Perfect. All right, so there's a key framework I want you to take away from today as you think about this. So we've talked about how do we get them to come to us directly. We need our web presence, and we want customers to interact with us directly on our web presence that we own and we control. Doesn't mean we don't have those other pieces. It just means we want them to come to us, ideally, right? So how do we do that? There's a key framework I want you to think of, and I want you to remember the king, the queen, and the crown jewels. Now, by this, I mean that content is, was, and always shall be the king. You want content to be the king, right? Customer experience is the queen, and data is the crown jewels. So through the rest of today, as I talk about this, remember the king, the queen, the crown jewels, content, customer experience, data, right? And we're going to start with data. And the reason we're going to start with data, notice I talked about Google having all these people ask them all these questions 3 million times every minute. Well, you can't manage what you can't measure. You have to know this. And your competitors, and especially the gatekeepers, know everything about your customers. So you want to use both quantitative and qualitative data to understand the customer needs so that you can provide content that answers their questions and improve the customer experience. So where do you start? Well, be like Google, evaluate search activity. What does your target customer search for? What keywords do they use? And I want you to broaden the way you think about that. It's not just about the keywords, it's really what questions do they ask? Those questions help identify your target's intent. They tell you, your customers are saying, this is what I want, this is what I need, help me, which will guide you to the topics of your content marketing and to the messages you put on your website and on your Facebook page and on your Instagram page and on your LinkedIn page and in your emails. That's where you get the information, right? If your customers are saying, "Hey, I have a problem," I'm going to pick our accountant friend who shared their business. If the customer is asking questions about, when are quarterly taxes due, or I'm going to sell my business, how does that impact my quarterly taxes? And you don't have any content about that. I don't know that those are questions people ask. I just made those up, by the way. But I know I ask every quarter, wait, what's the due date for quarterly taxes? Right? Because I forget sometimes. Wait, is it June this year? Did they move it? It's a whole thing, right? And if your website doesn't answer that question for me, I'm going to go someplace that does. And now you've lost that opportunity. So we want to understand, what questions do our customers ask? If you're a small business and you have a physical space, local search is incredibly important. And by physical space, I mean as opposed to e-commerce. So I would include, obviously our cat grooming in there, potentially our value-added reseller, certainly the mobile and window and door installation. You might not have a storefront, but you're servicing an area that is relatively local. You might do the whole tri-state area, but you're not serving California, right? So most searches today occur on mobile devices. These next 3 data points, I want to be very clear. This is 2019 data. Google has not yet given us 2020 data or 2021 data, but I'm pretty sure this has not changed a ton. We know that 50% of mobile searchers visit the store location within the same day. depending on, whether or not they can actually physically go to the store. We know that 50% of local searchers on mobile are looking for things like a local business address, and 78% of local-based searches on a mobile device end in purchases being made offline. Now, again, that's 2019 data. I suspect that number has gone down as the number of ways you could buy things online. I'm going to order food from a restaurant for delivery, right, went up a ton last year. I'm going to, I'm sure if, again, our accountant friend, I'm sure you're doing much more work with your clients without ever meeting them face to face. So they might be buying online in a way that they didn't do previously. But we know that a lot of times mobile searches result in an offline purchase, right? They're not looking for something to be shipped to them. They're looking for something that they can do entirely digitally. So searchers tell you what they care about, and you can use tools like Google Trends and Google Search Console to measure your keyword volumes and what's important to them right now. Google Search Console is a tool you sign up for. There is a link at the end of the slides. You sign up and you point it to your website. You cannot do it for a competitor's website. You can only do it for your own. But it will show you a performance report, and the performance report shows you what are the keywords, the top terms customers use to find your website. It shows you which terms you show up for and the terms that people click on. And it provides insights into what's become more important or less to them over time, which is really, really critical. Now, you may realize there's probably a lot of seasonality in that for many businesses. So again, I imagine as an accountant, you're going to get much more search volume in late in the year, people getting ready for taxes, in November, December, and keep going strong through April 15th or May 15th or June 15th or whatever tax day happens to be this year, right? Because it moved a couple times this year. Somebody who's doing the mobile windows and doors, the windows and door installation, you probably are less seasonal, but probably more during the warmer months, I would imagine, than the colder months. I could be wrong about that. I don't know your business, but I suspect that's probably true. Somebody for the art store, the e-commerce art store, or the fine artist, you may have various seasons through the year. People are buying gifts at certain times, or doing things like that can change when they're searching for different things. Now, Google Search Console shows you the searches that your website shows up for. It does not show you all the searches your website does not show up for. So Google Trends is another free tool that shows trending topics and terms. And I always recommend you start by just doing a generic search for your product, not the actual name, but just the generic search. And see what Google offers as alternatives, because they will show other searches that are there. You can also filter just by New Jersey if you want. I can say, I only want to see New Jersey as the state. And you can make a note of what customers want and say, wow, I don't have content around that. Maybe I should create some. Google My Business gives customers local information in Google Search. This is a Google My Business page, and it gives you insights about what they were looking for when they were looking for you. So again, this is a great source of data to say this is what's important to my customers, right? Okay.
Tim, we had a question come up around around this. So I thought it might be good to ask it now, but you can tell me if we're going to get to it. And I've just jumped the gun a little bit, but so we have someone who has not been in direct sales for the last 5 years because they've been using their existing base of clients. They are now ready to market to new prospects and are considering Google. They can no longer do door-to-door because of COVID, but they found that email campaigning was cost prohibitive, and that I'm trying to summarize because it was a long question, but that's okay. They found that Google search may be their best solution because they'd receive prospects that are looking for their services that have typed that, I guess, in the search box. And is this a preferred method of getting new prospects?
So I'm going to ask the question that is underneath that question. The preferred method for getting prospects is whichever one is most cost effective for you without putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So if you're having more success with Google search in terms of you're doing paid search and you're paying for ads and they're clicking on the ads and they are converting at a higher level than you're getting from email, then by all means, go nuts. You should absolutely do that. I would suggest that if you're finding email is cost prohibitive, that you probably have some opportunities to think about how to do email differently. So I'm going to assume, and I might be wrong about this, but if you're not getting good success with email marketing, it's because you're purchasing lists from places, and purchasing lists almost never works. So the cost becomes very expensive, right? It doesn't matter how cheap it is. If nobody buys, it becomes, terribly expensive, right? When I'm talking about email marketing, and I'll show a slide on this in a little bit, I'm talking about making sure you have a way on your website for people to say, I'm interested in hearing from you, and giving you an email address. And then that list of email addresses that you collect on your own website or on LinkedIn or on Facebook or wherever you collect them, which you're collecting for free. Obviously, you might have had to pay for the traffic to come to the website a couple of different ways, but some of the folks are just going to come from organic search. Some of the people are going to come because they saw your name in a flyer or something along those lines. But that list of people who said, I want to hear from you, the only cost to you of sending that is the cost of the email platform. And there are a handful of very good platforms out there, MailChimp's, Sendinblue, HubSpot, and some others that start at very, very low cost, a low monthly cost. And HubSpot has a free version for up to a certain number of email addresses. All it costs you is the cost of putting together the content and sending an email periodically, whether it's, a couple times a month, once a quarter. And so that should be, over time, your least expensive channel. Building the list takes time, right? So I want to be very clear. If you've got 2 people on your email list, it's pretty likely that it will not outperform other channels. But if you're buying a list and it's not performing relative to Google, I would say stop buying the list, work on building your own list, and then use Google paid ads or things like that in the interim while you're buying your list, while you're building your list. Excuse me, I misspoke there, right? So hopefully that answered the question, but that's how I would tend to think about it, okay? And there may be the odd case, I want to be really fair, there may be the odd case where email doesn't work for your specific product or service. Just in my experience, that does not tend to be the case. Usually email becomes the most cost effective over time, right? So yeah, I see your note. To purchase a list of creative analytics, it costs $30,000 per year for the service. Yeah, exactly. Don't buy that list. Correct, and that is correct. Everything you're saying there is correct, Clark. So it says to purchase a list of creative analytics will cost $30,000 per year for the service. To just email from a list non-solicited, I've been told that I potentially could be sued by the recipient. Correct, you could be violating GDPR, you could be violating CCPA, which are some regulations around this. You wouldn't be sued by the recipient, you would actually be sued by the Attorney General of the state of California or by the European Union trade body. What I'm suggesting is a form on your website that comes from your own email hosting service, which can be as inexpensive as free, that people have opted in to hear from you. You can absolutely send to those people. It violates no laws. You can't be sued by the recipient as long as you follow some regulations about letting them opt out if they want to, giving them an unsubscribe link, things like that. And the cost of that should be literally at most a couple $100 a month. A couple $100 a year, rather, excuse me. But yeah, buying a list for $30K, yeah, I'm sure that's not working. And I would strongly recommend run far, run fast. Use Google Ads for now. Work on building your own list through your own website, not a purchase list. Okay. I'm going to spend very little time here. This is something you will see in the slides. There are links to other tools. I mentioned Google Search Console. I mentioned Google Trends. There are others. There are some really good ones out there. SEMrush, Ahrefs, Moz, Google AdWords Keyword Tool. They range from being very low cost to semi-expensive, you know, a couple $100 a month. But they are other ways for you to get keyword research and learn what's important to your customers and may be worthwhile for your business. Okay. All right. So we talked all about the keywords. Why do we want the keywords? Because we want to know what content we have to talk to our customers about. And that's because content is, was, and always shall be king. We know what people are searching for. We know what they're looking for. These are actual search volumes we saw last year on Google. There was a 3,000% increase in searches for curbside pickup. 3,000%. There was an 80% growth in searches for local businesses. There was an 800% growth in searches for in stock, i.e., is the product I want to buy in stock. We know that 71% of consumers want to buy from companies that align with their values. And we know that there was a 50% growth in searches for discount code, right? We know all these things are true. So I want to show you something funny. I bought something the other day from Walmart. I was looking for a specific thing. I found it on walmart.com through a Google search. I didn't know where to buy it. I didn't even know where to start. I found it on Google. They pointed me to Walmart. Walmart had free pickup and delivery. How did they know free pickup and delivery was important? Because there's been a 3,000% increase in curbside pickup. Right? So what they do, they simply put the content on their website. Pick up and delivery, pick up and delivery. This is the homepage of Walmart.com. The second biggest thing on the homepage is this box right here, pick up and delivery. They looked at those keywords and they said, we should have content about this. And in my specific case, they got a sale. Right there, it worked. That's how you create a good customer experience. Listen to what the customer says, show them that you listen to what they did, and they'll do the things you want them to do, right? I wouldn't have chosen to buy from Walmart. I would have rather bought from a local merchant. I couldn't find it anywhere about how to pick it up at the local merchant. Walmart won this one. Now, I do want to point out that one way we try to do this is sometimes we try to get around this by saying, well, we'll just offer the lowest prices. Don't. With Google, we now have radical transparency. You know, I did a search for hotels in New York. There's the price of every hotel in New York. I did a search for running shoes. There's the prices of all the different running shoes, right? It's hard to prove you're the lowest price because there can always be somebody out there who's willing to sell for less. There's always somebody who is willing to say, I don't want to make as much money as you do, or I can afford to make less money than you can, or I'm an idiot and I will sell for a lower price than you will, right? And is racing to the bottom a winning strategy? Plus, what we're seeing is customers don't care as much about price. Now, there was a 50% growth in searches for discount code, right? That happened, that's real. But 71% want to buy from companies that align with their values. There was an 80% growth in searches for local businesses. There was an 800% growth in businesses for in stock, a 3,000% increase in searches for curbside pickup. Customers care more, a lot more, about local businesses, in stock, curbside pickup, and company values than discounts. So don't offer any more discounts than you have to. Just give them good value. Make it easy for them to find what they want. Make it easy for them to buy what they want. And you could probably charge a little more to boot. I probably would have paid more for the thing I bought at Walmart if I could have just walked across the street to a store right across the street from me and gotten it, instead of having to get in my car and drive to Walmart, right? That's how you use this data to inform the content so that you can answer the questions your customers have. I'm going to skip this section a little bit. I would like to do, did anybody submit a website they want to take a look at? Because now would be the time we can do that.
They sure did.
Okay, I'm going to switch to a web browser for a second. And I'm going to pull up the website. And we'll look at a live example rather than some canned examples that I have. Let's look at a real one. Where would I find that? In the chat or in the Q&A?
The Q&A.
All right. And I'm just going to take the first one that came in. Sorry for first come, first serve, but I've got it right here. So I've got the link. And I will pull it up. Okay, and you're not seeing my screen yet, right? You're not seeing my web browser?
No.
Okay, give me 1 second, let me do that. Okay, this is just the first one. In the time that we have, I'm only going to be able to pull up one, but I just wanted to make sure we did at least one of these. Okay, and you should be able to take things from all of these. So first and foremost, I love the images. You're selling art. You're making, you're showing me images of the art and things like that. I would suggest right out of the gate, make the art bigger. Pretty pictures sell things online. If I'm interested in art, I want to see the picture. I'm personally not young, right? So I find myself immediately leaning in because I want to see this picture. Like this picture automatically grabbed me, but I want to see it larger. So larger images may be a plus. The other thing is, first of all, great stuff. I clicked on the image. It took me right into the images. Great. Always make your images clickable. Fantastic. Good stuff. Okay. Now I noticed you got this scrolling item up here. This is a place where you got an opportunity. Introducing small original gallery. Cool. Tote bags and mugs. Cool. I click on this, nothing happens. If you're going to say, here's something I want you to do, it's so important. I'm going to have something scrolling at the top that tells you what it is. You want to make sure there's something I can click right there to take me to those tote bags. I want to buy a tote bag. Let me. I also would suggest maybe don't scroll. There may be some accessibility issues there for people who have, if I've got any kinds of like hand tremors or things like that, it may go by too quickly, or if I've got a reading comprehension problem, things like that. So from the making it easier for people who have disabilities to use it, maybe don't have it scrolling. I might put them in a call out, side by side or something along those lines, but make them clickable. The other thing I would say from a usability perspective, this is great. I would make the menu items here a little bolder. They're the gray on the white. There's not a lot of contrast, and that can be tough for people who have visual troubles to read. So I would make the contrast higher. You run into that a lot. Gray on white isn't great. It's better than anything. It's better than lots and lots and lots and lots of things. So to be really clear, you run into an issue. 12% of men in America are colorblind. So if you have specific, red and green next to one another, they may not be able to tell what it actually says. Gray, a light gray on white isn't as bad as that, but it can cause similar problems for some people with who have some ability to who struggle with the contrast, if their vision isn't as good. But your images are all clickable. You got prices. Like, this is great. This is really good. I click, takes me to the thing. Great. Wally, not Leo. Cool. Oh, I see. Okay. This is good. This is good. Yeah, this is really good. I like this. And really simple. I like that I can save it to my favorites. I love that I can click to enlarge. This is all good stuff. So across the board, I would say this is solid. I would just look at a couple of those things. Make the images a little larger, make the contrast a little higher, and more so than the scrolling, focus first on giving me a place to click. I know it says click here, but that white on the blue, that's very low contrast. That's very hard even for me to see, and I'm not colorblind. It also goes away before I can click sometimes, and then the other things aren't clickable. So that's what I would look at from a customer experience perspective. But overall, nice job, nice website, attractive. I get what you do. It's very clear. I would just think a little bolder, a little bigger, make it a little easier to read, make it a little easier for folks who might have some disability issues to interact with, and give them better calls to action on some of the stuff that's up at the top. But great stuff. Terry, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate you being willing to be our volunteer today. Okay. All right, so give me 1 second to get back to the slides, and we will jump into the last handful of things I want to cover with you. Appreciate your patience. All right, now I mentioned that, you want to have your web presence. You also want to be available to people on the other places they go. So I mentioned Facebook. There is a thing called a Facebook business page. It gives you a digital storefront on Facebook. It's free. There's a link here for how you set it up. And it gives you various types of features for certain types of businesses to highlight those offerings. So it can be really useful. Instagram business accounts give you free tools to do the same thing, right? LinkedIn does the same thing. Plus, I love their best practices page. It's great content, completely for free. You should check it out if you have a B2B website, okay? Now, didn't I just tell you a minute ago that these guys are the gatekeepers, you know, they're terrible and all this other kind of stuff? I did. It doesn't mean that you don't use them. It's just you have to remember Black Widow. Now, I don't mean the Marvel movie. I mean the spider, right? We know that a male Black Widow spider has to approach a female Black Widow spider with trepidation. There's some benefits of them, you know, getting together and working together, but he has to make sure he doesn't end up dead at the end of it. So Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Instagram, Uber, Instacart, Amazon, etc. They're all great. You should include them. You should work with them. They should be part of your presence. Also, remember Black Widow. You want to approach them with that same sense of trepidation of, I don't want to put all my eggs in this one basket. I don't want to be worried that they could bite my head off and I could end up dead, right? So that's how you want to think about them.
So Tim, I'm trying to manage questions from the Q&A and from chat because some of the people that registered are having a little bit of trouble, but something that just popped up that I thought might be relevant now. But again, if something you'll cover, we can table it, if you will. But how do you keep customers on your website?
Perfect. Answer their questions. There's a reason why we're talking about keywords. There's a reason why we're talking about doing the research and listening to what the customers are asking for. And actually, I'm going to step back for a second. What I just told you is 100% true. I also want to challenge the premise of the question for a half a second, because you don't actually want to keep them on your website. You want to get them to your website. You want to help them do what they want to do that fulfills your business objective, and then you want to let them get on with the rest of their day. Because if people don't have time, we're all pressed for time in everything we do, right? We've got a lot going on in our lives. And so you're not trying to keep them on the website. You're trying to say, I got you to the page that answered your question. Here's the call to action of what I want you to do. Right, I want you to buy now. I want you to add to cart. I want you to schedule an appointment. I want you to do some of the things I skipped back here, but I want you to sign up for the email list. I want you to request an appointment. I want you to add to cart and buy, right? But you want to make that as seamless and as frictionless as possible so that they can do it and then get on with, I got to pick up the kids from soccer practice. From soccer practice. Nobody's going to soccer practice right now. I have to go supervise my kids' Zoom homework. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to, check on my elderly parents who aren't able to get out. They don't have time. So your goal should be get them off your website as fast as possible after they've done the thing that benefits your business. And the way you do that is you make sure your content answers the questions that they asked, just like Walmart did. I was on Walmart's website when I bought that thing the other day for 6 minutes, if that. And I bought something. I did a Google search. I got to the page. I put the product in my cart. I gave them my credit card. I checked out. I was done. And I got on with my life. And I got a sale, right? So the way you do it is answer their questions, make sure you have the content that does it, give them the right calls to action that get them to do the thing you want them to do, and then let them get on with their day. Because if it takes too long, they're going to leave and they're going to go back to Google and find somebody else who can help them do it faster. Okay. All right. So I said content is, we started with data as the crown jewels. We went to content as king. Now we're going to end with the queen, right? And customer experience as queen. The reason this matters is your customer is your secret sales force. If they have a good experience, they're going to tell people. They're going to talk to all kinds of folks about what's going on here, right? If you get 260 customers per year, that could be one a day times 5 days times 52 weeks. And I realize some businesses, an accountant, you're going to have smaller numbers, of business consultant, you're going to have smaller numbers than that. Fine, make it one per week, make it one per month, right? But the average number of Facebook friends that they have is 200. That's a universally true number. That means 260 people times 200 friends that they have. That's a potential audience of 52,000 people. If 1% of those people actually talk to their friends, you reach 520 people. And if 5% of those folks convert, that's 26 folks. Remember, you only had 260 customers last year. That's a 10% increase in sales every year just by your customers sharing the experience they had. That is hugely powerful for you, hugely powerful. And it didn't cost you anything. And let me tell you, if they had a bad experience, you know they're going to tell everybody. But notice what happened here today. I had a good experience and I told all you about it because it worked. That's what people do. If you have a good experience, you might tell some people, just like I did. If you have a terrible experience, you're going to tell everybody. That's why customer experience is queen. That's why it's so important. The way you want to do this is you want to get visitors. You want to convert them. You want to have, your customer lifetime value. You multiply those together, you get your revenue per year, right? So this is just an example, right? You got 1,000 people come to your web presence. They convert at 5%. They spend $100 when they convert, or $100 over their various conversions. You got a top line revenue, $5,000. You grow these very simply, right? You either grow your visitors, and suddenly you jump up to 10,000. You double the conversion rate, you jump up to 10,000. You double the lifetime value, you jump up to 10,000. Or you double all of them, you jump up to 40,000. You try to increase all of these, but they all increase if you focus on that customer experience. If you focus on finding out what it is that's important to them, answering the questions with your content. So use the data to understand what's important to them. Create the content that answers their questions. Create the customer experience that causes them to convert, and tell all their friends about it to get you more customers. It becomes a really, really virtuous life cycle, right? Now, we've covered a bunch of stuff today. I want to be very clear. Don't try to do everything. Pick one thing. You're busy. You're a business owner. I always joke that, busy is right there in the job title. You're busy. Pick one thing. Spend 30 minutes on it this week. That's it. Spend 30 minutes a week, every week. Focus on the big items. You all know the story about, I've got a jar and I got a bunch of rocks and I got a bunch of pebbles and I got a bunch of sand, right? And if I take the big jar and I fill it with sand, suddenly I can't put the pebbles in, I can't put the rocks in because there's no room. But if I take the jar and I put the big rocks in first, then I can take the pebbles and they'll fill in the spaces. Well, the jar is still not full. Now I can take the sand and it'll fill in the space in between. And any sand that's left over, it doesn't matter, it's sand. Pick one thing, focus on the rock. Get the rock, do that for 30 minutes a week, and make continual improvements, right? So I looked at Terry's website. Terry, do not try to do all of those things I told you. Pick one. Personally, I would pick the scrolling thing at the top, make it not scroll, give them a call to action. Do that this week. Next week, worry about the contrast on the menu, right? One thing at a time. That's how you do this, and just keep improving. I mentioned we have a list of other useful, low cost and free tools for you. So you will get this in the slides when you download them after providing the survey. Remember that gatekeepers increase tolls on your road to revenue. Remember that if you don't have a website, you need to get one so that you don't have to pay as many tolls to people who charge you. Remember the king, the queen, and the crown jewels. Remember the e-commerce revenue formula. Visitors times conversion rate times customer lifetime value equals revenue for your business. Remember that you don't have to race to the bottom to actually provide a good value to your customers. You have to provide a good value, and they might be willing to pay you more for it. And remember that Google made $60 billion in the last quarter, $666 million every day, $28 million every hour, $460,000 every minute. Remember, how did they do it? They did it by listening to their customers and pointing them to the thing that got them the solution they needed. So now the question is, how can you do it for your business? With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christian.
Awesome. All right, so that was an amazing presentation, as always, Tim. So let me jump back into the ending here. Hope everyone enjoyed this webinar. And the next event, Tim actually comes back. And this time it's for driving e-commerce traffic that converts. So you made some customers happy, right? Now we need new customers, right? So that's next week, same time, same place. And as always, the NJSBDC has helped 13,000 plus small businesses in New Jersey. No cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, exclusive small business resources. Please register if you want any help with your business at njsbdc.com/request-counseling. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Margaret, for your presentation today. And I hope to see everyone next week.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Bye now.